trust myself at this point to feel out and just sort of flesh out. This is the fun part of the drawing for me, of just sort of playing with the forms and giving myself room to make errors and trusting that I'll be able to turn them into something. Because as you can see, now that I'm doing a second drawing for you, I mean, part of this process is when I start out, it doesn't look like anything to anybody. And it's sort of a matter of continuing to sort of sculpt the forms on the paper. And I'm going to use two other markers with this particular piece. I'm going to use a red marker at one point, and then I'm going to go in with white to pick out detail. And that gives me more room for error and play. And that also means my idea doesn't have to be as clearly delineated in my mind when I start, because I can kind of sculpt it. I can just kind of feel my way around it. Now note that up to this point I still have not gone in with the fine line markers yet. Part of the fun of doing these kind of organic forms is you can really play around for a little while before you have to start nailing down really specific detail. And what I'm drawing with now is one of the dyeing markers. I'm getting this softer gray. And I mean, a marker really has to be giving me no color at all for me to finally throw it out. And when you close them, they magically refurbish themselves just a little bit. As long as there's a little juice still in there, you can work with it. Now I'll start laying in a little bit more detail on the stone. Okay, and now I'm at a point where I'm going to use the fine line piece. Go in and put a little bit of detail. And what I want to do now is catch things like, where's the eyebrow, delineate a bit more of the skull and the face, what there is of it. Teeth, very important. And this is also where, as I go in with fine line, I'll start doing things like putting in lines that catch the edge or the top of a form that I may not have pictured when I was laying in the grays, but that the grays have created. So now I want to solidify that a little bit, make it more definite. Now, if I were drawing this zombie for a non-family network, I would get a little more gruesome. But it is a family show, so we won't go there with this guy.
More gruesome meaning?
Nice big loop of intestines hanging down to the ground, that sort of thing.
I see.
If you're going to draw a zombie, you might as well make it for zombie lovers. And the next thing I'll draw will be a kind and comfortable Vermont lake monster, something a little more friendly. Now at this point, I'm going to put more detail into the fingers. skeletal hands. He's got a fair amount of wiggle room, but you do have to make sure that the basic hand anatomy is visible there. Knuckles, fingers. Because he's a zombie, maybe he doesn't have all 5 fingers. Might be one missing. I imagine toes are the first thing to go, but I do want to have a sense of him standing on the ground here, so. Okay, now laying a little bit more on the, what do you want to name this guy? First name? Bob. Last name?
Williams.
Williams, okay. Thanks for shouting that out. Bob had a good long life. I'm being purposely a little vague about the details on this gravestone, but just enough to suggest sort of carving in there. Flies, very important again. As I said, I am going to go in with 2 other markers I didn't use last time. Red, part because it is a zombie drawing after all. With red, I can bring a little more attention to that fly. And I can use it to delineate the ribs a little more. Imply all kinds of horrible things about what's in there. And I'm just sort of using red as a second color here to punch things up. Okay. Here's old Bob. Now the other thing I'm going to use is a white. This is a fine point correction pen. There's a number of companies that make them. They're available in office supply stores, stationaries, pharmacies, and so on. And I prefer the ones where you have a little bit of control, that have like a squeeze bulb, so that I can bring out as much of the whiteout as I want to work with. And this is where I do a lot of my final drawing, is with these whiteout pens. And I knew I was going to be working with this from the start, so there are aspects of this